Just 6 months after the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, you've got to remember the United States Navy was seriously on the ropes. Japan looked absolutely unstoppable, but out there, in the vast blue of the Pacific, a single, desperate gamble was about to unfold, a battle that would change the entire course of the war. So let's dive in and see how this incredible story played out.
And here we are, right in the thick of it. This right here, this is the USS Yorktown, just moments away from a fatal blow. This single image, it just perfectly captures the brutal reality of Midway. I mean, this was a fight where the fate of nations really did hang in the balance, all decided by a few thousand men over a few incredibly critical hours.
And you know, that quote, it's really not an exaggeration. We're talking about a battle that historians put right up there with legendary showdowns like Trafalgar. Why? Well, because it wasn't just a win. It was a complete and total turning of the tables that defied all the odds. So, the big question is, how on earth did the underdog American fleet manage to pull this off?
Okay, so to really get how the Americans won, we've got to first understand what Japan was planning. And let me tell you, it was a bold plan. I mean, really audacious. The goal? Simple. Wipe the U.S. Navy off the map in the Pacific for good.
Just take a look at this map. By the spring of 1942, Japan was on an absolute roll, carving out this massive empire. But they had one nagging problem. America's aircraft carriers had escaped Pearl Harbor. And after the surprise Doolittle raid on Tokyo, well, that was the last straw for Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto. He was determined to eliminate that threat, once and for all.
And if you just look at the raw numbers, you can see why they were so confident. The Imperial Japanese Navy brought more carriers, more battleships, more of everything. On paper, they were absolutely the superior force. I mean, they had the numbers, the experience, and a string of victories that made them seem pretty much invincible.
Yamamoto's whole plan hinged on this tiny but vital American outpost, Midway Atoll. He figured the U.S. would have no choice but to defend it, and that's when his powerful carrier fleet, hiding just over the horizon, would spring the trap and, boom, game over for the American carriers.
But here's the kicker. While Yamamoto was busy laying this brilliant, complex trap, he had absolutely no idea the Americans were listening to his every move. See, the U.S. had a secret weapon of its own, and it wasn't a ship or a plane, but it would turn out to be the single most decisive weapon in the entire battle.
And that weapon? It was pure intelligence. These incredible codebreakers down at Station Hypo in Hawaii had managed to partially crack the main Japanese naval code, JN-25B. Now, they couldn't read everything, but they could read just enough to know something big was coming. A huge operation targeting a place they only knew by the codename AF. The million-dollar question was, where in the world was AF?
So to figure it out, the U.S. team came up with this simple, just brilliant little trick. They told the garrison on Midway to send out a fake message, an uncoded message, out in the open, saying their freshwater system was broken. And sure enough, like clockwork, they soon picked up a new Japanese intelligence message saying, guess what? AF is short on water. Got 'em. The trap was blown wide open.
Now, knowing the time and the place, Admiral Nimitz started gathering every single ship he could get his hands on. And this included the carrier USS Yorktown, a ship the Japanese were convinced they had already sunk just a month before. But in what can only be described as a miracle of engineering, shipyard workers in Pearl Harbor got her patched up and battle-ready in just 72 hours. Her presence at Midway was going to be a complete and total shock. Meanwhile, over on the Japanese side, their own grand plan was starting to show some serious cracks. It was this incredibly complex, intricate thing. But that very complexity, mixed with a healthy dose of, well, let's call it hubris, created some absolutely fatal weaknesses.
I mean, think about it. The plan was so complicated, everything had to be perfectly timed across hundreds of miles of open ocean. One little thing goes wrong and the whole house of cards could fall. His ships were spread out way too far, leaving his main carrier striking force totally exposed. Plus, they just flat out underestimated American resolve. And maybe the biggest mistake of all, they were operating on bad intel, still believing the Yorktown was at the bottom of the sea.
So you've got this incredible showdown shaping up. It's like a high-stakes poker game where one player can see the other's cards. Admiral Nimitz knew everything. The date, the location, the Japanese playbook. He was setting up a perfect counter-ambush. And Yamamoto? He was sailing straight into it, completely blind, with no idea what was waiting for him.
And that brings us to the morning of June 4th. This is it. All the code breaking, the planning, the hubris, it's all about to collide in this one chaotic, desperate fight.
And the entire course of the war is about to change in just a handful of minutes.
Okay, so picture this. You're the Japanese carrier commander, Admiral Naguma, and you're in a terrible spot. Your planes just got back from hitting Midway, and you're rearming them for another go. But then, a scout plane, one that took off late, by the way, finally spots an American carrier. What do? It's a horrible dilemma. Do you launch an attack right now, even though half your planes have the wrong kind of bombs? Or do you wait, rearm everything properly, but risk giving the Americans the precious time they need?
Nagumo made a choice. He chose to wait. He figured, okay, let's get our first wave of planes back on board, rearm everybody for naval targets, and then launch one massive coordinated punch. Now, by the book, by Japanese naval doctrine, this was the logical move, but it turned out to be catastrophic, because it meant that at 10:25 that morning, his carrier decks were a chaotic mess of planes, live bombs, and fuel hoses, basically a giant floating tinderbox. So while Nagumo's crews are scrambling to get this massive counterstrike ready, American planes start showing up. The first attacks from these high-altitude B-17s, like this one you see just barely missing the carrier Hiryu, well, they didn't hit anything. But they were a sign, right? A preview of the absolute chaos that was about to be unleashed as wave after wave of American planes started finding the fleet.
Now, those early attacks, even though they were unsuccessful, did something absolutely crucial. They pulled the Japanese fighter planes, their air cover, all over the place, chasing these low-flying torpedo bombers. And that bought the Americans precious minutes. It was the exact opening the American dive bombers were looking for, and they came screaming down out of the clouds and found the Japanese carriers at their most vulnerable moment. In just 5 unbelievable minutes, they landed crippling hits on 3 of them, the Akagi, Kaga, and Soyu. And let me tell you, those 5 minutes didn't just win a battle. They changed everything.
When the smoke finally cleared, the results were just staggering. Japan lost all 4 of the fleet carriers it sent to the battle, all 4. The United States lost just 1, the heroic USS Yorktown, which fought on despite being badly wounded. In a single day, Japan's offensive power in the Pacific was shattered.
And it wasn't just the ships, as devastating as that was. Japan lost over 3,000 men, and that number included hundreds and hundreds of their very best, most experienced naval pilots. These were the elite aviators, the ones who had dominated the sky since Pearl Harbor, and they were, quite simply, irreplaceable.
After Midway, Japan's relentless advance across the Pacific was stopped cold, for good. The strategic initiative, the whole momentum of the war, shifted to the United States. And with its unbelievable industrial might, the U.S. could replace its losses far faster than Japan ever could. The long road to victory really started right here.
And it just leaves you with this incredible what-if, doesn't it? Yes, the battle was won with unbelievable courage and sacrifice, but the stage was set by brilliant intelligence and critical Japanese errors. It all came down to the thinnest of margins. What if that one Japanese scout plane had launched on time? It could have changed the entire outcome. It's just an amazing reminder of how history can turn on a single dime.